In this lesson, we'll create a section perspective from our 3D model. Alright, so I'm back in our 3D area here, and what I want to do next is go ahead and create a new section. So make sure you go ahead and save your file here once we have our first view in, and go ahead and get rid of your section. That's one of the good things about creating the section, extracting the slice, placing it down, and then getting rid of it. This way it won't affect your model if you have another perspective anywhere throughout your presentation. But make sure you go ahead and save this, that way it updates when we kind of bring this back into layout. So let's go ahead and click on our section button once again. And again, this time we're going to run a section right through the middle of this guy. So go ahead and place, kind of align it like so. And again, we're going to move it. So we'll move it in here once we get towards that center so we can get a peek into the middle of this model. We'll bring it out just a little bit more here. Nice. So now what I can do is I can kind of create a view here. I like what we have in place, so I'm going to go ahead and keep this how it is. So what I'm going to do, now that we have this one saved here as section through tower A, let's save this as something that's just a little bit differently. That way it doesn't affect our other views, because I'm going to actually drop in a perspective here momentarily so that we have something else to reference. So let's go ahead and do a file save as. So file, save as, and I'm going to call this one something a little bit differently. Say floor plans, sections, sections, and perspective. Just so I know that I kind of reference it off of this one. And plus it'll be different than my other ones. And it won't affect my other models if I do some updating. Alright, so I'm going to keep this in mind when we're doing this, so we know where we have this saved. Make sure this is what we actually bring back in. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and set up a scene really quick. So I'm going to scroll in here so I can get a good view. So we'll go to Windows, Scenes, plus Create. And I'm going to call this Section Perspective. And you know what? While we're here, before we do this real quick, let's make sure we have perspective on real quick. Lost my view here. Not a problem though. We'll click back on there to kind of reactivate my section. There we go. But I do want to make sure perspective is on, because that's going to have a huge impact on how this view looks. So go back to camera, perspective, and that's going to make this look a lot better and a lot easier to read as well. Perfect. Now we can go back up here to Windows. We'll create a scene. Plus create scene. Now we can add a name to this. So we'll say section perspective lobby. Say enter. I'm going to go ahead and save this one. And then we can jump back to layout here really quick. And now I'm going to bring in my new section perspective. And the reason why I saved it as something different was because had I kept it the same, it would have affected this model. So a large portion of this model would have been disappeared, or would have disappeared. So I actually want to use this kind of as a perspective and kind of a reference, if you will. So we'll drop in another one here. So this time I'm actually going to insert. So I'm going to go File, Insert, grab the one we just did there. So it'll bring it into our project, and now I can place this exactly where I need it. So I'm going to make this a little bit smaller here. Place this up here. Get rid of some of this extra, or this dead space, I guess you can call it. And we'll go ahead and move this over just a little bit more. Don't want it to get too tangled up with things. Probably even stand to shrink this down just a little bit more. There we go. And then now, last but not least, I'm going to go ahead and adjust my styles here. So we'll go to Styles, and we're looking for Hidden Line. Now, you might not be able to see it on my screen, but we've done Hidden Line quite a bit that I'm confident you'll know exactly what to do with Hidden Line. So let's scroll in and take a look at this line work. Let's see what happens if we go ahead and vector this. Now, we'll probably end up looking a lot better since we're going to use vector, and if not, we can always go back. Cool. Vector definitely cleans up the line work. I'm going to do one more time. Let's go back to raster. I want to kind of compare. You know, I'm going to go ahead and keep this one at, actually, I liked the fact that I can actually peek into the model doing it this way, but I can actually do the peeking into the model with this perspective. So I'm going to go back to raster, just so my, or vector, excuse me, so my line work's cleaned up a lot better. And let's see what happens if you put on shadows, if that's going to help us out at all. And if it doesn't, we'll just turn it right back off. If it does, we'll keep it on. Not much difference there, so I'm not too worried about that. Cool. So what that means for us is we have a page here that actually, you know, we've got floor plans in place. We've got symbols for sections, so we know exactly how we're looking into this model. The only thing we really need now is to use our scrapbook to add titles and stuff. So I'm going to go back and reference some old pages. Let's go back to this first page. And once I get back on that page, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy and paste those labels that I have in place. So I'm going to say Control C, come back to this page here. Now I'm going to say Control V. I'm going to move it, and we can just drop these down wherever we want. But I do want to make sure that that's going to be on the correct layer. So I want to make sure it's a unique element. When I select this, I want it to be unique as well. So now I can come in here and I can, you know, add whatever title I want to. So I could say this one here looks like it's probably going to be a different plan than what we have in place. So, you know, this could be, let me scroll in. This is actually our basement plan. So I can click on this like we've done before, and you're pretty familiar with how this works now. I'm just going to type in basement plan. And then whatever scale we have, let's see here. I'll right click, go to scale. So it looks like we're on 1 to 50. I'm going to put that right in here. So we'll go in here for scale. And I'm going to say 1 inch equals 50 feet. 1 inch equals space 50 feet. Bingo. And you can basically do the same thing, copying and pasting for the rest of the plans, referencing whatever floor they're on. And you could do the same thing for, you know, your sections here. But now that you see how it's done, I'll let you take care of the rest and kind of flesh out the rest of this with text and labels. But I do want to jump into details. That's one thing we haven't talked about. So we've talked about, in this case, floor plans, sections, section perspectives. And if we go back to our page up here, elevations and perspectives, we're adding text, grounding our drawings using shapes. So that leaves us with the last thing is going to be details. And details are super easy to use as long as you have those details in place. Now the good thing is you don't have to have your model covered with every single connection. In my case, what I did was I actually had connections strategically placed, and I'll go back in and reference those. After all, from these perspective views and these elevations and looking at the structure, you really can't see all those details, and that's what the purpose of the zooming in for detail is. And we'll jump into that in the next lesson. So I'll meet you in the next lesson where we'll work with some more. We'll actually create a structural page where we'll have a few structural details. We'll show our building core and our overall superstructure for our building.